Today, Sylvie and I are in the village of Hatfield Heath, which is situated on the western edge of the county of Essex, close to the border with Hertfordshire. The village is quite large and it spreads out over a wide area bordering its large expansive village green. This house on the main street is reputed to be the oldest in the village. The Thatcher's pub is the prettiest pub in the village, and it's also very popular. We're starting our walk along the Dunmow Road, which takes us in a northeasterly direction out of Hatfield Heath. About half a mile along the road, we take a right turn onto a footpath at a place called the Three Chestnut. Pretty soon we're out into open countryside and we're on our way to the neighbouring village of Hatfield Broad Oak. So far the weather is fine, although the forecast suggests possible showers by the evening. Well, after a couple of miles we eventually reached the outskirts of the village of Hatfield Broad Oak. The footpath brings us to a place called Broad Oak Farm, which is also a locally renowned sausage factory. Once we're past the farm, we come onto a road called Cage End, and this road is lined with many old, charming, pretty cottages, and it eventually brings us up onto the village high street. The old village water pump still stands on the high street, and this used to be a communal gathering point for women in the village in the old days. The Cock Inn, which used to be a coaching inn, stands along the high street, and Sylvie and I are hoping to stop here for a drink on the return journey. And the high street in the village is also lined with many old charming period houses. At the end of the high street we take a left turn onto the B183, also known as Broad Street, and this takes us in a northwards direction out of the village, and it's somewhere along here we're hoping to get a view of Barrington Hall. Sadly, most of the house is obscured by trees, so we can't really see it very well. The manor of Hatfield Broad Oak was once owned by the Barrington family, and in the 1500s Sir Thomas Barrington married a lady called Winifred Pole, who was a granddaughter of Margaret Plantagenet of royal blood, and they became fierce rivals to the bloodline of the Tudor family. A couple of miles along the road we eventually reach Broadfield Common, and we turn left. This lane eventually brings us to a place called Bridgefoot Farm, and it's here we take the footpath and begin heading back southwards. The footpath also brings us onto some wetland marshes, which are fed by a stream known as the Pinsey Brook. As we walk along the path by the marshes, Hatfield Broad Oak Church becomes visible on the hill in the distance. We leave the marshes and take the footpath up the hill towards the church. Well, it's 4 o'clock and the church bells are ringing for us as we pass through the churchyard. The path through the churchyard brings us back out onto the village high street, and so Sylvie and I decided to stop for a refreshing pint in the Cock Inn.
Cheers.
Well, half an hour later, and suitably refreshed, Sylvie and I are heading back to Hatfield Heath. Two miles later, we arrive back at the Three Chestnuts, and Sylvie can't resist stroking one of its residents. I forgot to warn her about the electric fence. Good job it wasn't switched on. When we arrive back in Hatfield Heath, it's a delight to see the local cricket team playing on the village green. Life just seems to be getting back to normal now after the pandemic. Sylvie and I stopped for a quick drink and a tea time snack at the Thatcher's pub, and just as the showery weather arrives, we've walked almost 9 miles in just over 5 hours.
Cheers.
But before we go home, we take a little walk down a quiet lane opposite the old mill house to have a look at a rather unique piece of village history. Hatfield Heath is home to the only remaining and almost intact World War II prisoner of war camp. This was known as Camp 116 and it had closed in 1955 and has remained reasonably intact ever since, but it's currently under threat by developers who want to knock it down and replace it with houses. Well, we've had an enjoyable day's walk today and we look forward to seeing you next time.